Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Shin Kim. This is the class of Old Testament Theology, and today my topic is Israel. As you see, when you start reading the Bible, especially after Genesis, actually you may notice that there is one nation called Israel. So the term or the nation of Israel is one of the most also important theological topic in the Old Testament. That's why I'm dealing with Israel today. Usually, yeah, we call God, okay, God or the Lord, but especially in the Hebrew word for God is Yahweh. So usually the Israel people, they called their God as Yahweh, Yahweh, okay. So according to the book of Genesis chapter 12, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendant I will give this land. So usually, yeah, throughout the whole Bible, actually, it seems like for the first time, God by himself actually appeared to some specific person. That person is Abraham, okay, Abraham. One day, God appeared to Abraham. Oh my God. It seems like he chose actually Abraham among so many peoples. And he promised that to your descendant I will give this land. So promised land. You may heard the vocabulary promised land. Maybe present Canaan area, okay? Palestine, in that area. This land means Palestine. So I don't want to talk about the whole history of the Israel, okay? As you see, there was 7 years severe drought, and in order to find food, actually Jacob with his actually 11 brothers, he has 11 sons, and he brought them to the Egypt, and actually they were enslaved in Egypt over 400 years, okay? And even, yeah, during that time, actually, even God knows the future. And there are so many people, and God chose Abraham. And God promised that I will give this land to your descendant. That means I will give this land to the Israel, okay? According to another book, Genesis chapter 22, God said, take now your son, your only one son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. Oh my God, God actually gave only one son. Abraham has only one son called Isaac, and he reached to teenage. One day God again appeared before Abraham. Abraham, brought your son and sacrifice him. Actually, God never actually asking any human sacrifice, okay? From the Genesis to the Revelation, we never see any evidence that God need human sacrifice. But he just tried to test, okay? Always, yeah, when you are in the company, the actually president actually give you higher advanced you to the higher position. At the time they test you, okay? Exactly, God tested Abraham for the he can receive the promised land or not, okay? That's why he tested him. And Abraham, without any hesitation, he brought his son to the mountain, and he tried to give his only son Isaac as a human sacrifice, okay? At the time, what did God say? Stop, Abraham, stop, Abraham. I know that how you are so faithful to me. And he actually pressed Abraham. So yeah, that's why Abraham became the ancestor of Israel, okay? So God promised to Abraham of land and the seed are repeated. So through the whole actually Bible, the Old Testament is talking about God's promise to Abraham. Hey, I'm gonna give this land to you. Through your bloodline, the Messiah will come. Okay. So after actually Abraham, actually the second king called King David, and that bloodline finally Jesus Christ was born. Okay, so God always promised that, hey Abraham, I want to give this promised land to you. This is your land, the promised land, and the seed means the bloodline. through your bloodline, the Messiah will come in order to save the whole actually humanity. And also God promised regarding a nation called Israel through Abraham. So that's why Abraham, throughout the whole actually Bible, there are three main figures called Abraham and Moses and King David. Okay, these three, they are actually they are chosen people by God. And usually it seems like whenever we read the Old Testament, only Old Testament, it seems like God is only for the God for Israel. Okay, other tribe, other nations, they are disabandoned. They are actually forgotten by God. God concern is only focused. God only focus on Israel. Okay, we are excluded, unfortunately, at the time, because God, especially in Old Testament, God is the God of Israel. Only God of Israel. Okay, not including Gentiles, other nations, other tribe, other races. Only Israel. Okay, and Jews descendants descended from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So whenever Israel people remember their ancestor, hey, and their God, hey, you are the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, according to the book of Genesis chapter 32. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel. So finally, God, even the God gave the name of Israel directly to Jacob. Previously, yeah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Okay, and at the time of the Jacob, finally, Jacob actually no longer called as Jacob. Okay, his first name, original name is Jacob, but suddenly God changed his name to Israel. So the name of nation's name Israel actually coming after actually Jacob's second name. That second name Israel was given. The name of Israel is given by God, okay? Because you have a struggle with God and with man and have overcome. Jews believe that they are God's chosen people. Yeah, definitely. Wherever they go, we are chosen people. They are so proud of that, okay? Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Whenever we read the Bible, or especially Old Testament, there is only one nation called Israel. Yeah, Asians, Africans, even I'm not sure, but Europeans, they are excluded. Okay, they are excluded. Only Israel was God's chosen people. According to the book of Genesis, the Exodus chapter 3, the Lord, the God of your fathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob has sent me to you. So yeah, whenever God actually described himself, he actually appeared before the Moses. Hey Moses, who are you? I am that who I am. And another actually God's name is I am God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and I'm gonna send it to you. So God, even God actually appeared with the name of God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. That's why these three first actually ancestor is extremely important. And because of this actually three ancestor, actually the name of Israel, the nation of Israel was born. And it seems like Israel is only one chosen nation throughout the world. So sometimes we can misunderstand that God is only for Israel. But as we know, when we reach to New Testament, God's concern actually going around the world. Okay, so that's why God's concern, He always focusing on Israel. And finally, around more than 1 million actually slaves in Egypt. Israel people actually they're living in Egypt, and they were slave over 400 years, and they cry out to God, God, please escape us, please let us have freedom. So God called actually Moses, and they actually crossed the Red Sea. You may see Exodus, okay, the picture. Moses reached out his hands a step, and he hit the ocean with his step, and suddenly the ocean was divided, and the Israel people actually crossed the Red Sea, and that is the Exodus story. And little bit later, actually, Egyptian king actually brought a lot of army. You may see the right picture, okay? Egyptian kings actually brought a lot of army with chariot. Actually, they tried to kill all the Israel people, but what happened? As soon as the Israel people crossed the Red Sea, and Egyptian actually army followed them. But as soon as the last person crossed the Red Sea, suddenly God actually enabled the water moving, and under the big actually wave, all the Egyptian soldiers, they were dead. Okay, they died. So what does this mean? God always actually have a fight against the other Gentiles. He only tried to save the Israel people, and he actually tried to sacrifice other nation in order to save the Israel. Okay, so who is the king? Who is the warrior? Who is the soldier? Who is the main soldier in Israel? A person? No, definitely God. God is a soldier. God always brought the victory. So that's why whole Israel people, they actually devoted themselves to God, and they try to follow the direction of God, and wherever they go, actually they worship God of Israel, okay? God of Abraham, God of Jacob, God of Isaac, okay? So after actually Exodus, actually they try to go to the promised land, okay? It's a long way. Actually, around 2 weeks actually walking distance, okay, from Egypt to the promised land, Canaan, with over 1 million people. They walking on the desert, and it only takes around 2 weeks. But unfortunately, Israel people actually they disobeyed. And that's why they stay in the desert over 30 years. And Moses is the actually excellent leader who doing the Exodus. Okay, he escaped Israel people from the power of Egypt. And the next actually leader is the Joshua. Joshua is actually servant of Moses, and as soon as Moses died, and he become a second leader. Okay, he become the next leader. So throughout the 40 years in the traveling, the Israel show a lack of faith in God, unfortunately. Yeah, they complain a lot. Yeah, as we see, many of us students, you are living in California, and we know that when you go to the Las Vegas, actually, if you imagine you are walking toward the Las Vegas, okay, Las Vegas, and it is extremely hot. It seems like a desert, and the sun is extremely strong. Maybe you cannot survive without water, okay? You cannot survive without food. And during nighttime, daytime is extremely hot, and nighttime is extremely cold. So you cannot survive without fire, okay? So exactly the same thing happened to the Israel people, okay? They travel the desert, okay? But as we see, during the daytime, sun is so strong, so they complain about that. And suddenly God actually covered the sky through the cloud, dark cloud, okay? Dark cloud actually remove the sunlight, okay? It actually blocked the sunlight, and they feel more comfortable. And nighttime, as we see, it is extremely dark. At the time, there is no electricity, okay? And there is no flashlight, okay? It is extremely dark, and they complain about that. And during nighttime, it is cold, okay? It was cold. So they complain about that, and God suddenly gives some fire pillar. The fire coming from sky, and they even during the nighttime, it is extremely bright, and they never feel any coldness. And a little bit later, we are thirsty. They complain, we are thirsty, and we want to stay in Egypt. Why? Even they complain to Moses, why do you bring out? we're gonna die in the desert. And God actually provide water, and they also complain, we are lack of food. We are dying because of the lack of food, and why we wanted to stay in Egypt. They complain, keep complaining, keep complain. Finally, God and Moses and God actually they are get mad. So maybe God judged them, and God God thought that they are lack of faith, they complain, and I cannot bring these people to the promised land. So God wait for the full first generation die in the desert. So that's why they stay in the desert over around 40 years. 40 years. First generation who live in Egypt, they died after 40 years later. And the second generation, they were born in the desert. Okay, so God brought the second generation to the promised land. And even Moses had a moment when his faith was weak. So he got old. Moses got old, and finally, at the age of 120, actually he died in the desert. And who gonna be next leader? Yeah, Joshua. Finally, even Moses has a moment when his faith was weak, and because of this, Moses would not enter the promised land. He saw it, okay? He go up to the mountain, he saw the promised land, Canaan, okay? But he is not. Moses was not allowed to enter the promised land because he got old and his faith also become weak. That's why. And Moses appointed Joshua to lead the people into Canaan. Canaan is the promised land, and gave a blessing to each of the 12 tribes. Actually, Jacob had 12 sons, and according to the 12 sons, actually Israel people were divided 12 tribes. And finally, actually, Joshua became the second leader after Moses, and now he should conquer the Arab nation. So from Egypt going to the promised land, there are so many nations, so many tribes. That means he crossed the foreign land. The Israel people enter the foreign land, and what do you think about it? If there is a king in some specific land, and suddenly other nation coming in, what do you think about it? Definitely there is a war, okay? There is a war. The Israel people, in order to cross the desert, and there is a nation in the desert, and the Israel people, actually, they try to conquer the people, okay? So that's why there is a big war between the Israel people and other nations. So Joshua actually, he take the land. So with sword, okay, with the power of the sword. But as I said, definitely Joshua is he is excellent actually general, okay. He is warrior. But what did I say? Above the Joshua, actually, who is the most talented warrior? The talented warrior is God, okay. So even it seems like Joshua lead the Israel people to the promised land, but actually the first actual figure who brought the Israel people to the promised land, who is that guy? That person is actually a God, okay. God is the word. And Joshua, actually Hebrew name is actually Jesus. Joshua is actually Hebrew, but in the Greek, actually his name is Jesus. So exactly, Joshua has the name of Jesus, okay. Joshua become the leader of the Israelite, and Joshua, that name means God saves. What does it mean of the meaning of the Jesus? Jesus, the real name meaning is God saved, okay. God forgive the sins. That's why actually, the guy who wearing the red, okay, red robe, he is Joshua. And as I said, from Egypt, go to the promised land. There are so many nations, so many tribes. So how can the Israel people pass their way? They must conquer that area, okay? And there is so many war between Israel people and the other tribe. So this actually painting exactly describe how Israel people actually go forward, go to the promised land. During their way, yeah, there is barrier and there is other nation and they block and there is war between them. Okay, so but God, as already I said, God favored Israel. God loves Israel. Okay. So, according to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 9, it is not because of your righteousness or your integrity that you are going to take possession of their land, but on the account of the wickedness of this land. The Lord your God will drive them out before you and accomplish what he swore to your father, to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Again, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So who is God? I am the Lord of your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. God loves Israel. That's why he escaped Israel people out of Egypt. And God supports Israel because of, not because of Israel's righteousness, okay? Only. But God hates what? God tried to destroy the other nation, other tribe, because on the account of the wickedness of this nation. Yeah, as we see, other nations, other tribe, other peoples, actually they worshiping idols, okay? They worshiping other god. They worshiping Baal. They worshiping moon. They worshiping sun, okay? Instead of worshiping God, other whole nation, okay, except Israel. All other nations, they worshiping idol. That's why God hates them. God hates their wickedness, okay? But only Israel is only one nation to worship God. That's why God actually protect Israel. Yeah. Maybe as a foreign nation, foreign tribe, sometimes we misunderstood. Sometimes we cannot actually agree to God's plan, but that's the God's plan, okay? God's plan is protect the Israel, and he tried to destroy other nation because other nation they worshiping idol. That's why. So that's why God defended the Jewish people. The book of Deuteronomy chapter 12, you must not worship the Lord your God in their way, but because in worshiping their God, they do all kinds of detestable things the Lord hates. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire as a sacrifice to their God. So why? Why God hates other nation? Because other nation, okay, foreigners, they worshiping their God. Even they sacrifice their sons and daughters. Yeah, definitely in other religion, there is human sacrifice. Even they sacrifice their sons and daughters. So God hates them. Okay, God hates idol worship. So that's why, but Israel people, they only worshiping God. So that's why God tried to protect the Israel people. God has an incredible worst side to his personality. So yeah, too much favor on Israel. That's correct. Okay, or whenever you read the Old Testament, yeah, God's only concern is Israel. That's all. Old Testament is too bloody in all of the battle. Yeah. So many people actually misunderstand God is God. God is actually the God is over war. Okay. God loves the war. God loves the murdering, and God Old Testament. Yeah, so bloody. Yeah, that's right. Whenever they conquered one area, they try to kill all the people, including women and the child and even animals. They kill everything. Oh my God. How do you think about this one? That's why Old Testament is so bloody. So even, yeah, one of my friends one day, he asked me that he was traveling his body, and so I asked him a question, why are you traveling? Why are you shaking your body? So he said that I'm so afraid of God. Why do you afraid of God? Yeah, Why do you fear God? Actually, yeah, God, he said that God is so cruel. He punished every person. Yeah, when I read the Old Testament, he killed everybody who don't worship God sincerely. So I'm so afraid that God will punish me. So yeah, that's right. That's right. Whenever you read the Old Testament, yeah, God is the bloody. God is bloody God. God is God of the world, and God is the actually murderer. He killed everybody, including all animals. Yeah, especially when you read the Old Testament. And only He saved. He only protected. He only defended. His actually Israel people. The book of Isaiah chapter 52, the Lord of Israel will lead you, protect you from enemy attack. So that means Israel is chosen people, but other people, other nations, they are enemy of Israel. So God should remove other enemies. Oh my God. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That is one of the huge actually theme in Old Testament. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, other nation, other foreign, other Gentiles, okay, we are excluded from salvation. We are excluded from the love of God, unfortunately. That's the one of the biggest topic in Old Testament, unfortunately. And one of the best example is that war in Jericho. Maybe many of you already heard about this story, okay? Many of you are familiar to this story. Okay, let me read the book of Joshua chapter 5. When Joshua was by Jericho, yeah, the Jericho is a foreign city, okay? That he lifted his eye and looked, and behold, a man stood opposite him with his sword drawn in his hands. Joshua went to him and said to him, are you for us or for our adversary? That means our enemy. Are you enemy or are you coming to help us? So he asked a question and he said, no, but as a commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. So, and Joshua fell his face to the earth, to the ground. He knelt down because that guy, even he seems like a human being, but he is the angel of God, and sometimes even angel of God fight for Israel. Oh my God. One angel could murder more than 100,000 people one day, okay? Angel has superpower, okay? So there is some cases that angel fight for the Israel. And so finally, as I said, who is the warrior? Who is protecting Israel? Yeah, God. God is warrior. God sent the angels in order to protect his people. So, yeah, the book of Joshua chapter 10, for the Lord fight for the Israel. The Lord fight for Israel. Actually, the angels fight for the Israel. So who gonna win? Okay, human being is a limited one, but the angel is a supernatural being, and definitely angel has more power than human. And so God fight for the Israel. Actually, angels fight for the Israel. Who gonna win? Definitely, actually, Israel. Okay. So one of the famous story in Jericho is that Israelites march around the wall of Jericho. So God commanded, okay, hey, Joshua, around the castle 7 times, 7 days. And in the 7 days, you yelling at the castle, and the wall of the castle will be collapsed. So Joshua actually circled around the Jericho 7 days, and finally they yelling, and suddenly by the miraculous power of God, the actually castle, the wall of the castle was broken. Okay, so Joshua commanded an Israel to shout out, and the wall collapsed. So that's why they conquered Jericho. This is one of the famous actually word written in Old Testament by actually by the leadership of Joshua. Okay, when you are curious about the war, how many were, and how they conquered the other area, actually you may read the book of Joshua. Joshua is one of the, as I said, Joshua is warrior. Okay, he through his whole life actually he fight. Okay, he actually has war in the battlefield. And so many words in the Old Testament, God's chosen people for the promised land, okay? They must go to the Canaan, okay? During their way, there, as I said, it's a long journey and so many nations. And God actually conquered every nation. And finally, maybe, yeah, for several years over, finally they arrive in the promised land. The righteousness of God as a means of to fulfill the promise. This why there is so many words. That is God's promise, okay? Hey, Moses brought out these people out of Egypt. I will lead all Israel people to the promised land. That's God's promise. Even it takes a lot of time. Finally, through that word, actually, God fulfilled the promise. Okay, they conquered a land, occupy others, and established new nation in the land. As I said, okay, they means Israel people. Israel people conquered a lot of land, and at the time, each land actually occupied other nation, but Israel people actually conquered other nation and established a new nation in that land. And the word was seen as a tool of God. Okay, God fulfilled His promise through the word. So mighty power in the battlefield. There are many complain that God arbitrarily ordered the destruction of the entire city. Yeah, as I said, as soon as they conquer some specific city, they must kill all the male, female, children, animals. Oh my God. Usually when there is war, actually they try to save the animals, okay, cow and the sheep and goats and the children and the women. They only try to kill the warrior, male warrior. But unfortunately, when we read the Bible, Old Testament, usually God ordered to kill everything, including animal. Oh my God. So that's why many complain, okay, why God kill everyone, everything. We complain about that. We are curious about that question. And under the Joshua command, all the city of Canaan was conquered. So yeah. And how could a loving God command the destruction of all those innocent people? So that's why we complain. We raise a question, okay? So in order to solve the questions, actually other guy called Jacob Wright, actually he writing about book, world memory and the national identity, okay? Maybe one of the best actually answer that question is that God hates idol worship, okay? So he wanted to remove the idol worshiper. That is actually one of the answer. Why God actually murder everybody in other nation? Because they worshiping idol. So God actually tried to remove other idol worshiper. That's why. And maybe second reason is that he favors to Israel people. That's why. So when you look at the map, actually from the bottom, actually river of Egypt, yeah, they actually going their way. Okay, they going their way, and as I said, going that journey, there are so many actually some kinds of nations. Okay, nations. So you may go to the red line and the blue line, and during conquering the promised land, they actually pass away, pass the long way, and wherever they go, they conquer that area. God ordered the destruction of these people whom the Jews dispossessed, and God was going to give the nation of Canaan. Especially you may see the green part, okay, green part. That is the actually Canaan, and the modern country called Israel, okay. Palestine and Israel actually now they are both of them actually reside in that area. And that land is actually the land of the promised land, okay. So God actually tried to enable people going that way. And the whole actually journey seems like this one, okay. Exodus from Egypt and entry into Canaan. So usually, yeah, you may see the Egypt. Yeah, Egypt. There is Nile River. Nile River. Actually, if there is a big water, that means the farming area. So that's why it's green area. So especially the Israel people, actually, they live in Gosen, okay? The Pharaoh, the king of the Egypt, actually gave the land of Gosen to Israel people, and exactly 400 years later, actually, finally, by the leadership of Moses, actually, they escape. They escape from there, and they go to the Midal and the Mara, Elim. Actually, in that area, in the present, actually, nation is Saudi Arabia, maybe. Yeah, they actually moved to that area, and finally, at the bottom, Mountain Sinai. Actually, at the Mountain Sinai, actually, they received the Ten Commandments by Moses, and they go to the another way, Eziga, Geber, and Kadesh Barnea, Punon, and Edom, no Moab. Actually, in the land of the Moab, especially the mountain of Nebo, actually Moses died. Okay, Moses died in the mountain of Nebo, and the next actually leader called Joshua, actually he actually enabled the Israel people go to the Canaan. Okay, Canaan is the Jerusalem. Okay, Jerusalem is the capital city of the Israel, and yeah, during going that way, actually, as I said, there is so many war and conquered and excluded the Gentiles. And God and nation, God and the Israel. The Lord is the great king. So in during that time, okay, Moses, Joshua, and after Joshua, there are another actually religious plus political leaders, but they have no king. Okay, Israel never has any kings. Okay, because God is king of Israel. That's why. That's why God never allowed appointing a person as a king, because God is the king. God is the warrior. Okay, the Lord is sitting on his throne. Throne means he has leadership, political leadership, and God is the king of Israel. And also God is the enthroned ruler of the universe. King, throne, reign. These kinds of vocabulary appeared in Old Testament many times, and that means God is the king, God sit on the throne, God reign over the Israel, and God also victorious warrior. Okay, so Zion, maybe kingdom. Okay, kingdom theology. So that's why, God never allowed making a person king in the Israel. And as we know, but unfortunately, Israel people, as soon as they enter the promised land, and they covered with other many strong nations, and they request, give us a king, give us a king, give us a king. Actually, Israel people actually cry out to God. Finally, God was persuaded by the Israel, okay, I'm gonna give the king. And the first king called actually Saul, second king, King David, third king called actually Solomon. So, but we must remember, during their way from actually Exodus to going into the promised land, who is the real king of Israel? The real king of Israel is God, okay? But human is limited one, and usually instead of an invisible God, we request a visible person as a king. So that's actually human personality, and Israel people finally seeking, asking God. So that's why God allowed the king to Israel people. So Israel still God's chosen people. Still they believe that. Okay, even Israel people minority in the U.S. population. Okay, U.S. population. Maybe less than 1% Jewish people living in the United States. But as we see, as we know, so many Nobel Prize, so many big politicians. So especially the most of Israel people, they are super rich, and they own the bank, and they actually control the whole world economy. Okay. Even though, still Israel people actually they believe that we are chosen people. Okay, we are chosen people. God bless us. So they still stick to the following the Ten Commandments, including around 600 laws, And on the every Saturday, Sabbath day, actually they go to the synagogue, have a worship to God in Old Testament. Still they believe that we are chosen people. Okay, so whether or not, okay, one thing is true. Even though the throughout the whole world, actually Jewish people, they are in number, okay, numbering, they are minority, low population, but most of them actually they are super power to read the world. That's actually actual truth, okay. And finally, God allowed the king, and especially God loves King David. So God gave the David covenant, and God chosen Jerusalem, and also He have a covenant with King David. So that's why whenever we dealing with the history of Israel, the Old Testament also, King David is one of the most important figure. And but as we know, the Israel actually keep last forever. No, no, no. Even God favored, God loved Israel. Okay, God loved Israel. He chose that the person in Israel. Okay, Israel. He loves Israelite. He loves the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and he loves Moses and King David. But as we know, especially at the death of the third king, King Solomon died. But unfortunately, King Solomon had so many wives, more than 700 wives, okay? And most of them brought their idol. So almost at old age of King Solomon, he started worshiping idol, okay, other god. He actually forget about God of Israel, and King Solomon worshiping other god, okay. So as soon as actually King Solomon died, actually the whole Israel was divided, North Israel and the South Israel. And Assyria, another nation called Assyria, actually from, you may see the map, actually from coming the Assyria or Iran, Iraq, actually at the time, one of the biggest country called Assyria. Assyria invaded North Israel, and they wholly destroyed North Israel in BC 721. So that means that 50% of the land was disappeared from the nation of Israel. And maybe when you study about the world history, you may heard Babylonian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar II, he is one of the famous king throughout in the East Asia. Okay, Babylonian Empire finally conquered southern Israel. As I said, the northern part already occupied by Assyria, but Babylonian Empire later become bigger, and they actually destroyed Assyria, and they conquered Jerusalem, including all South Israel. So that means North Israel and the South Israel, they were gone. They disappeared. They were conquered, especially BC 597. So exactly Israel, the nation of Israel lost their nation. So even though God loved Israel, okay, God favored Israel, but unfortunately, throughout the whole history of the Israel, sometimes, very, very few times, there is good king like the King David. But except the King David and the other, a few kings, most of the king of Israel, they ignored God of Abraham, and they start worshiping idols. And that's why God allowed other nation destroyed Israel. Okay, so in the first part, okay, God so much favored Israel. He protected them. But as soon as Israel betrayed God, God allowed other nation invade into Israel, and Israel, the nation of Israel, was disappears. So it seems like almost 2,500. There is no nation of Israel. But Suddenly, surprisingly, in the 1948, actually Zionist Israel people, they re-established a Jewish homeland in Palestine, and the nation of Israel was proclaimed. So it was extremely surprising thing. Okay, they already lost the country over 2,500 as the punishment of God. Okay, the situation of Israel is totally has been changed. God favored Israel, but God disabandoned Israel. He forget about the Israel over 2,500. But suddenly, 2,500 years later, Zionist Israel people, they established the nation of Israel in the land of Palestine. Okay, that's why still there is war between the Israel and Palestine. So through actually today's actually lecture, we actually review about the short history of the Israel and why God favored Israel, and suddenly why God disabandoned Israel. Okay, there is no eternal nation, secured nation. As soon as they run away from God and start worshiping other God, God disabandoned them. And what happened to us now? Yeah, especially the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, actually the opportunity of salvation to open to everybody, every nation. So that's why throughout the whole world there are now so many Christians. So that is the Old Testament. God only favored Israel, but New Testament, God opened the opportunity of salvation to everybody. He loved the world finally. Jesus Christ died for everybody, every nation, every tribe, every races. Okay, that's the one of the biggest difference between the Old Testament and New Testament. Okay, thanks to listen to my lecture. See you next week. Thank you.